Hey there, Courtney here for New Pragmatic. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join me for this short discussion on how to do font pairings. And more importantly than just font pairings, because font pairings is its own video all to itself. It's more about how to select typography. And when we begin talking about how to select typography, there is a real challenge for new designers. And whether you've been doing this for a while or you're brand new to it, what you will come to realize anytime you step into a challenge where you've got to maybe you're working with a client, or maybe you're just working on your own personal portfolio, but you have this desire to find a new typeface that you're going to make the anchor of your new project. And you come in, and right now we're looking at the type specimen project for New Pragmatic, but you come in and you have something like this and you're like, all right, I'm going to highlight the text and I'm going to come over here to my font selector, and oh my God, I have more typefaces than are humanly comprehensible at this moment. How do I begin to sort through this madness? And of course, if you're using Figma, which many of you are, you're looking at something that's listed by type name only. Like, I'm only seeing the name of the typeface. I'm not actually seeing what it looks like. Now, of course, you can go the plugin route. All right. So I'm going to highlight this typography, and I'm going to control click to pull up the plugins. And there's a fantastic Figma plugin called Better Font Picker. All right. And Better Font Picker is interesting. There's nothing wrong with Better Font Picker. I can go through here and I can see what this selection would look like in Adele, or I can come down here and maybe see what it would look like if I had, say, Courier. You know, Courier is not exactly a typefacer, or Futura. You know, you get the idea. You can come through here and individually select typefaces, and you have the preview that kind of tells you what to expect from the typeface that you're selecting. But let's be honest, that's limiting at best when it comes actually seeing what your options are, because you're not going to be able to see all these together and compare them very easily. There's a lot of hunting and pecking involved here, and my experience has been that anytime that you go through and you're selecting multiple typefaces, just getting this down to 4 or 2 that you want to look at and compare against one another, you could spend hours doing this, and then you're never really sure, are those the best 2 that I could have selected? So I want to show you a couple of other tools that you could be using. Here, obviously, we have Google Fonts, and Google Fonts, anytime you open up Google Fonts, there are 977 font families staring back at you. And this is just as overwhelming as that selector in Figma, except you do have the ability to see more than one at a time. There are ways that we can go through and filter this down, but the one I want to point you to before we begin filtering inside of Google is a site called Word Market. And with Word Market, you have the ability to type in a phrase, and it's going to preview all the fonts that are on your computer. So I'm going to type in Pragmatic. And here, right away, if I want to see my fonts, these are the fonts that are located on my machine. I have the ability to look at them in slightly different variations. But overall, I'm getting a sense of what's actually on my machine. This makes it very easy to kind of look around and see, get a general sense for what's here. Now, some of my fonts do not have a preview available with them, so they're not showing up in this view. Another way that you could go about this is just to look at all the Google fonts that are available. So the 977 families that you saw available on Google, they're now here, and you have the ability to look at this from a few different options. You can blow these up so you get a better sense of how the characters are formed. You You can also look at it in night mode, if you will. So you're looking at it on a dark background. So you got to get an idea of how these separate out. You can shrink this down so you get a sense for what this would be like displayed at smaller sizes. And this is great, but I got to be completely honest with you. While I can go through and select some of these, and if I selected multiples and then come up here to filter select it, I do get the ability to look at some of these side by side, and that's great. But I never really get the sense of what these are like when compared to the filtering that's available over on Google. And there's a reason why I like filtering typography, particularly web fonts, on the site itself. And it's because when you go in and you begin filtering typefaces, I believe it's smart to go in with a target in mind. So for instance, if I'm trying to go in and select an anchor typeface, a typeface that's going to be used for all of my body copy, might even be used for like some smaller graphics, cards, things like that, I'm going to want something that has enough weights with it so I have some flexibility. I really think any typography, any typeface that you choose for an anchor typeface needs to have an italic, so that when you get into things like titles and names, you have the flexibility to use that. Anything that is a 1 or 2 style typeface it's almost an immediate out. And a lot of people will ask, well, what is a typeface like O2B Sans here? What is that really for? Well, there might be some logo usages for it. There might be some sort of artistic usage, like this lacquer over here. Lacquer, it's one style. But, when you get into Google, you can filter out a lot of these single style typefaces really quickly. I just come into font properties, I turn on number of styles, and the moment I go 3+, I've gotten rid of 2/3 of the typefaces that are inside, that are being hosted by Google. If I go up and I say, okay, I want to make that 11, now I've got it down to 49 font families. That's before I've sliced this any other way, thickness, slant, width, any of that. Obviously, I also, when I'm looking for anchor typography, I'm wanting to get rid of things like monospaced fonts. I'm wanting to get rid of handwriting. And if I got rid of those, and I just said serif, sans serif, and display again is meant to be headlines or large type, I'm down to 46 families. And 46 families, that you can make your way through that pretty easily, and you're like, oh, okay. So really, in the grand scheme of things, Google has about 46 families for me to choose from, not 977 families that you have to go working through. Now there's another question. Well, Chris, aren't I missing out on some really nice typography? And the answer is, yeah, sure. You probably are missing some very nice typefaces that don't line up with some of this criteria. Another way that you could do this, though, is you could say, okay, I want to look at things with 2 styles, but I also want to look at things that are only sans serif. Okay? And now I've got it down to 179. So my advice to you, and if we can go further here with language. For instance, I'm working primarily in English and Spanish, so I can just say, show me the Latin typefaces, and that doesn't knock it down all too much, because the number of styles probably has done most of the work. But I'm still down to 176 typefaces. That's a lot. If I came in here and I said, and I am interested in the width, and the width of these typefaces, if I go, I love this little, no fonts found, there's nothing here. But if I come back over and I adjust this to be a little more narrow, I'm down to 30. If I go really narrow, I'm down to 2. There's all sorts of ways that you can slice this. But these filters are all going to be within that 977. If I turn width off, within this 176, I now want to adjust the width. So in short, use filtering to your advantage. The same sort of tools are available over here on Adobe Fonts, but use filtering to narrow those selections down, and don't look at this as, oh my God, I have to choose between all the options that are possibly out there. Filter those down and then choose from that smaller pool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining me for this short video on really filtering typography so that you can make smarter decisions faster. I'm Courtney for New Pragmatic. Take care.